It's good to be here. When things change, things always bring up pressure for people. And there are ways of handling pressure. From a human perspective, we learn some of these ways through life. But there are other ways. There are spiritual ways of dealing with it. These spiritual ways have included believing in God, allowing life and God to have more purpose in circumstances and situations. These ways mean more to the human than they do to the divine being, because the divine being doesn't experience pressure in the same way. The circumstances and limitations that the human consciousness goes through are mostly because of humanity's inability to let go. Let go for all the trying, let go for all the attempts, letting go for all the things that seem to be pressure in the world. There are, of course, pressures of circumstance, lacks and limitations, lack of food and other things, lack of peace, things of war and fighting that go on. And then there are things that are circumstantial pressures from day-to-day life, which nevertheless seem to be real, seem to be inflicting something of the sense of pressure on consciousness. But these things are, to a large extent, part of the illusion. And for us to come clear of these senses of pressure, we need to understand a little bit more of the subconscious mind, where the pressure is brought to the surface. And people put pressure on each other for whatever reason. They tend to appeal to something in other people's subconscious mind. And that trigger in the subconscious can be pushed up into the conscious mind without a person fully understanding why they're feeling the pressure. For example, if someone says something that can automatically hit a button of subconscious, and in that button, as it gets pushed, something comes up to the surface where we become either subject to that little subconscious thing, or we become aware of what it is. Always this opportunity to be more aware of what it is when someone's pushing our buttons, when circumstances or situations are pressing something to the surface. There are, of course, spiritual ways of dealing with the sense of pressure too. There are passages from different sacred texts, there are holy scriptures and words from people in the past on how they dealt with things. Ultimately, these can be useful for the mind and for the heart. But the real way to let go of pressure, to transcend pressure, is to turn everything over to the angelic side of consciousness. To realize, while we're still alive and capable of realizing, that really there's nothing we can do from a human standpoint. This was spoken of over and over again in all the sacred texts. So letting go to divineness, letting go to God, letting go to the Creator, not necessarily leaving it all to circumstance, but being aware that we cannot work ourselves out of the pressure by getting involved with the pressure. Because if we become subject to it, if we take it on, if we allow the pressure to be intensified in ourselves, one of the two things is going to happen. We're going to clear through to a whole different level of consciousness, or we're going to stay under the pressure of circumstance without clearing through. It's like a cloudy day. Either the clouds are going to be pushed out by the sun, by the light, or the clouds will remain. The opportunity, of course, is to be able to transcend ordinary reality, the ordinary reality of pressure, the ordinary reality of circumstance, situations. Whatever it is that the ordinary reality is showing. In that, there's the movement of the potential for spirit, the expression of spirit, the opportunity to allow spiritual expression to come forth. There is always an opportunity in that way. Part of the difficulty that mankind has faced is not seeing the union of heaven and earth in themselves. So people allow the pressure of circumstance to be there because they see God somewhere else. They don't see God acting here on earth. They see divinity as being something separate from themselves. The only real way out is to come to the truth, to the knowing for oneself that heaven and earth are one, that these forms could no longer operate unless there was a divine being in there, giving these forms life. The reality is that all pressure, all circumstance, physical, mental, emotional, is all really in the hands of the divine being that powers and generates the life force for the body and mind and heart, for the human side of consciousness. The human side of consciousness is so drawn into the circumstances that it forgets. Sometimes it forgets that God is with it, that divinity is here. And so it puts it off by reason of belief, by reason of other people's belief, into some place where God doesn't belong, in some far distant range of time and space, maybe the future, maybe in the past. But really, the opportunity is always to come back to the only moment where God can, and the Creator can be experienced, which is in all of the existing moments of life. This is the moment when the pressure is felt by reason of the Creator. Something's coming up to the surface. Great. Give thanks for it. Be aware of what those things are that are coming up. And have the attitude which allows those things to come up without getting bonded to the thing.
Des?
Yes?
I'm wondering if you're aware that Miles was trying to get through on this call but has been unable to? And I'm not sure.
If he has been trying, he's not been trying calling me here.
Oh, I just had connection with him and Randy too. I think they're both trying to. I'm sorry to interrupt, but...
Randy, are you on still?
Yeah, I'm here on the phone there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And Miles is not online, so... Oh, he's there. Let me just add him in.
Thank you.
Thanks, Liz.
Hello, it's Miles.
Okay, Miles. So the thing is to be aware that the circumstances and limitations of human consciousness are all based on a sense of separation. The separation of mankind from divinity, mankind from God. This sense of separation has been going for so long that mankind has been in a rut. It can only think of itself as going through this trench or this rut of consciousness and how it deals with circumstances and situations that come up. But really, we're meant to, with all the things that come up, we're meant to let go. Meant to, from the human side, realize once and for all that we really can't do anything. There's nothing that the human can do to any of the things that will last. People try to do things that seemingly last, and they seem to have a life that they're happy with. And ultimately, if they're wedded too much in life, then they, when the point of death comes on, then they miss the opportunity to transcend life itself, the sense of the physical body and mind and heart. We have bodies, we have minds, we have hearts, but they're transitory. The very nature of the body and the mind and the heart is one of a changing experience. From the first moment that everyone became aware of their body and mind and heart, the process of growing started. Growing into the body primarily as toddlers or infants, and then growing into becoming aware that we have minds and we have hearts, and then finally growing into an awareness of something beyond the dimension which is the realm of spirit, the realm of divineness. Without a clear connection to the awareness and the sense of awareness of the divineness being one with the human, there exists a sense of separation. I don't think anybody in the world has found it very easy to feel separate from God, to feel separate from the Creator. So there are all sorts of rituals, all sorts of ways that people come up with to appease God. Primarily superstitious ways, maybe some sort of sacrifice to God, maybe some sort of offering to God. But that itself is pointless in a way. Because the only thing that the Creator, the only thing that God wants is for the human to realize the truth. Can't get away from the Creator. Can't get away and separate oneself from life any more than trying to do away with life. Life doesn't die, life can't be killed. So when circumstances come on, they come on for a reason. When pressures come on, they come on for a reason. When these reasons are individual in nature, then there's something that the individual can do about it, which is to stay harmonized with the God being within, the wonderful one within. When the circumstances show that there are a lot of people going through points of pressure, then one can see that there are particular junctures in the collective consciousness when it seems to be a squeeze, when there are things that come up and they're squeezed in nature. So sometimes whole groups of people feel the squeeze. They feel the circumstances come up upon them. These are interesting times when that happens. Whether it's for an individual reason, for a collective reason, it's important to hold steady through those times, to have a victory over the moment of the points of pressure. Because those points, those victories always tell the tale. If we have a victory over the pressure patterns, then when those pressure patterns come back again in the future, it'll be easier to deal with. If we don't have a victory, if we succumb to the pressure, and most often human nature succumbs to pressure, then the pressure comes even greater, seemingly. And then it seems like there's even more to handle. From the human perspective, it seems like it's an impossible task. But one has to deal with the victories one victory at a time, one pressure pattern at a time. And the best way to deal with them is to allow for the divineness within. If one doesn't know about the divineness within, to come in contact with the awareness of God being within. If one doesn't know the full awareness of that, Yes, it'll be very hard and very difficult to handle the precious circumstances bring upon one. But once one comes to know the God being within, once one comes to know why these things actually happen, what the points of pressure actually do to assist human consciousness to grow out of the little box of limitations, the little box of self-imposed limitations, not counting the imposed limitations from society or our families or different religions and things. We can grow out of these. We can get out of the box of limitations. When one sees that there is no limit, there are limitless possibilities to where we can be. But being inside a box, for the most part, human consciousness is used to the box. It's used to those that keep the box going. Governments, institutions, religions, maybe different types of agencies, tax departments and collection agencies and all other different ways that mankind has, doctors, lawyers and different things, politics, laws, all part of the box of humans making. You see, the divineness is far beyond the ability for the box to have any power over it. And the boxes that mankind have are all deceptive. They're all part of a plan by the points of deception to control people through fear. So the box is made up out of fear. The box is made out of fear of what could happen, what may happen, what will happen as far as the box is concerned, or those who try to hold up a sense of a wall of one of the boxes. So if we look at the box, it seems to have different sides to it. It seems to be dimensional. It seems to have some weight to it. But the weight is only there by reason of the fact that we accept those sides, those limits. It's said that when they used to train elephants in circuses, they'd tie a rope around its leg and put a spike in the ground, and with a 3-foot rope they could control the elephant. And after 3 or 4 days, the elephant wouldn't even try to get away, and they could remove the rope and the elephant would just stay there. So also with mankind's consciousness. Elephants are, of course, highly evolved beings also. Highly evolved in the family sense, in the consciousness sense, in the brain capacity sense. So also with mankind. We're highly evolved, have certain capacities, but mankind is also trained by limitations, by the rope around its leg, by the box around its form. And these boxes aren't even physical boxes. They're mental boxes, mental ideas. Ideas of debt, ideas of politics and laws. Now some of these things are useful. It's useful to be aware of things and have a box of speed limits, for example, so people aren't just driving 100 miles an hour down the street, because that could be dangerous for us. Some of these things are useful in a society where people don't take personal responsibility to impose certain limitations, so that people don't hurt themselves and hurt others. But other things are there just for the sake of control. When you come up against something, some lack of limitation, some wall or idea of the mind or the heart, first thing I would suggest is look at it. See what it is. See who's trying to promote it. See who's being with, trying to establish something from the idea of that limitation. And for example, let's take, if one owes some debt to somebody, that person can either try collecting the debt, or they can pass it on to perhaps a collection agency. And in that, the collection agency then tries to create fear, and tries to create a sense of a reason why the person should pay that debt. Of course, the debt was an illusion to start with anyway, because in reality, there is no such thing as even money. It's all a fragment of consciousness. It's all an idea. It's all a mental construct. But these mental constructs become so deep that people believe in them. They believe in money. They believe in debt. They believe in taxes. They believe in the collection agencies and the different agencies that try to impose something on them. And so they believe in the box. Most people, when asked, believe in death and taxes. But what if you became aware of yourself as a being that couldn't be imposed upon with limitations? What if you could see yourself as being unrestricted by these sort of boxy ideas? Then you'd be free. So the truth of what was spoken of as ye shall know the truth and the truth shall set you free has a very big impact on us. Because as you come to know the truth, then all the boxes start to fall apart. All the sides of the box, the sides of health, the sides of wealth, the sides of all the different things, of all the different relationships, with all the different parts of the mental construct. You are, in truth, unable to be restricted by any of the boxes, as is everybody in the world. But mankind, because it forgot that it was divine, because it forgot that it walked with God, has found itself in a lower level of consciousness, one where boxy ideas, where fear can create a box, where fear can create a fence which people don't get out of. So it's wonderful that the being brings these and creates circumstances so that these things come up for each one. It certainly came up for me in my experience, and in those points of being face to face with the boxes, being face to face with the fear, being face to face with the limitations and all those who try to promote those patterns, I realized once and for all that I was free, and that there are levels to which mankind cannot impose its ideas on anybody. Levels of control. You, in truth, as a being, cannot be controlled. There is no one who can, in that sense, be controlled. Unless one willingly gives the power to others. If we give power to others, then we accept the limitations. But we don't need to give the power away to others to have limits over us. What are the limits? Well, if people go to the doctors, sometimes the doctor has an idea, based on their experience perhaps, based on what they've learned or other things, and they can say something. They can say that someone has such and such disease perhaps. And so the human being merrily goes back on their way thinking they've got something, thinking that that thing is a limitation. And doctors used to give people times of how long they would even live, or how much time they had left. Again, a mental construct which was an imposition of a limit, which no one can really tell. No one can really tell how long anybody's going to live. No one can tell most of those things. But when people believe them, they believe in the box. And they believe in certain things that become patterns which they accept. So people accept things like chemotherapy. They accept all sorts of things like most of the medicine that goes on in the world and the pharmaceuticals that go on in the world, all in the supposed preposition that they can heal people or that they can slow down some disease. But really a lot of it is so archaic. 100 years from now, even 20 years from now, we'll realize the limitations of medicine. When we think back on some of the ideas of medicine 100 years ago or a few hundred years ago, they used to think that putting mercury on people would assist. Of course, down the road they found out that mercury was toxic. Well, they used to believe that you could put creatures on people and drain out their blood, and that would assist. So people had things put on them to drain out their blood. Or they used to, in lieu of the fact that they didn't have creatures, they'd just pop open a vein and let out the blood, and people would die. And it was just pretty much a land of confusion around medicine that's still out there. It's still here. Medicine by itself is an imposition of some people's ideas. In reality, the being can heal all things. The God being within can create and can heal. It can bring upon circumstances, and it can change circumstances. A lot of it depends on a person's belief. A lot of it depends on what a person accepts as their limits. We're quite fortunate, actually, each of us, to come to the point, and I'm thankful for the circumstances in life, how it conspired to bring upon pressure patterns for myself. Because in those awarenesses of the pressure patterns over many, many years, I've realized I'm free of those pressure patterns. They don't touch me in the way that they did 20 years ago, for example. I used to be in a different place of awareness around what could affect me and how I was affected by those things. And this, of course, included health and money and taxes and everything else. I was fortunate to be freed of the limitation by an idea, a very, very simple idea. Not even a belief in God idea, but a very simple idea that started in my consciousness about 30 years ago. An idea that popped into my head, and everywhere I looked around I started to realize that perhaps that idea was the truth. Because it certainly seemed that the world was made up out of a bunch of different ideas. Well, this idea was a simple one that I hadn't really thought of. But thankfully, through some people who introduced me to the idea, I started to think about it a little more. I started to see, is it possible that this simple idea has some merit? Is it possible that this simple idea has more of a bearing on the outcome of things than all of the different things that I used to look at? So I'll speak about this very, very simple idea. Everybody knows it deep down, of course. Everybody from time to time thinks about it. And people believe in it. People go out of their way to try to establish all sorts of relationships with this idea. But they make it too hard. The real idea is that God is with you. When I first heard this idea, it was a thought. And I had to think about this long and hard. And it was easy to think about it when times were good and easy. But then, of course, when circumstances of pressure and limitations came upon myself, then I had to think about this also. Does this have merit? And with all the different ideas that were floating around in my head from childhood, from being an adult, from being trained, from being taught, from school, from business, from law, from all the things that society had imposed. This was the one thing that nobody ever spoke about. This was the one thing that very few people that I ever encountered in life came to truly know. People believed in it. People believed in God by the hundreds and thousands. I've met hundreds and thousands of people who truly believe in God. But very few people really held to the idea that God was with them. And in this simple idea, I came to know the truth for myself. That of myself I can do nothing. There is no power that I have as a human to do any of the things to prolong my life, never mind any circumstance or situation that befalls me. So the only thing I could do was to have a certain attitude when it came to those things, when it came to pressure, when it came to ideas of lacks and limitations. I was very thankful to have my father as a great teacher in this regard. He tried to teach me Catholicism. He tried to impose the box of religion, his religion ideas and the religion ideas of Catholicism upon me. But I held in all of the times and all of the challenges with my father, I held to the one premise, that God already was with me, that I couldn't get away from God. It was an impossibility for that to happen. That I didn't have to be any better, I didn't have to have a better heart, I didn't have to have a better circumstance, I didn't have to have a better situation, I didn't have to have more money, I didn't have to pray more to God, I didn't have to offer sacrifices to God. There was nothing of that. All of those were, after all, part of the box. I didn't have to do anything, in fact, because the reality that I based a very simple premise on was that God was with me, no matter what. And in that, I realized that the truth of this was the truth for each person. Because if it was true to me, and I could prove out in myself and through my circumstances that I was no longer subject to the boxes, and then that had an impact and a bearing on how other people saw themselves in society, how other people treated all the things that came up for them also. So over the years, I've been delighted more and more to see the different things, the different limits that others try to impose on me. Limits of circumstance, limits of situation, limits of tax, limits of collection agencies, limits of money, limits of funds, limits of law, all sorts of things. And in all the losses that I experience, I'm thankful for every single one of those, because I lost my awareness of the box. I came free from the limits that were imposed upon me in them, including ideas from medicine and science and things that doctors told me, things that bankers told me, things that lawyers told me, things that judges told me, things that relationships told me, because of one simple truth. This one simple truth to me and to my sense of awareness had to transcend all the limitations. It had to be an absolute that superseded all the other seeming truths out there. Because certainly there were a lot of people trying to tell me the truth. My father, religion, science, medicine, bankers, lawyers, judges, everybody telling me the truth of what they thought the truth was. But when I saw what they were telling me, I realized that they were telling me what they saw. What they saw were limits. And they believed in limits. They believed in limits that were imposed on them from society and conditioning. the more I came face to face with these limits, the more I realized really we are unlimited. And I keep finding for myself the beauty of the truth of this. And the beauty of the truth that God is with me. The beauty of the truth that all things are created by the Creator. And without the Creator is nothing made that is made. So this very simple truth, very simple realization, and thankfully the pressure of circumstance, health patterns, you all know some of them. You're aware of some of the health patterns that I've gone through. They mean nothing. Ultimately, even death is again one of those seeming health patterns. But it's an idea of death. No one really knows what goes on after that, and all the ideas of death are just ideas. But if one looks at even the idea of the phrase that life can't be killed, life cannot die, then what happens to death as a box, as a limit? We are fortunate to be able to not only conceive, but to prove out that we truly have no limits. As sons and daughters of God, as those who are created by the limitlessness of the Creator. It's just mental constructs that limit us. Ideas, beliefs. And one person's belief is good for them. I'm thankful that my father had a sense of belief that was what he accepted. I certainly had no sense of trying to change his pattern of belief, because that's what he believed in. When we had discussions and I was trying to explain the difference of his belief and my belief, at first I used to think of it as belief, and then I realized, I don't even believe that God is with me, because the word itself, belief, became an imposed limit. The word faith is an imposed limit. All of these things are more layer after layer of the box. Peeling away the layers is like peeling away the layers of an onion. Each layer reveals less of a layer, gets smaller. So initially when I was younger and these layers were there, I seemed to have quite a large onion. Quite a lot of things that seemed large. But thankfully, with pressure, with circumstances, with lacks and limitations, with different things that came up, I was able to, one layer at a time, look at it, peel it away, be free of that layer. Coming down to ultimately less and less and less that really could have control over my mind. See, the mind is the part that circumstances and people can control. The judges and lawyers and the tax collectors and everybody else. They're all imposed their ideas on the mind, their limits, their boxes on the mind. But really, the truth that set me free anyway, and I suspect that it's the truth that sets all people free, is the truth that God is with me. Very, very simple. Don't need a better heart, don't need a better circumstance, don't need to do too much in that regard. Don't even have to believe in God. Just accept things as they come up. Just walk with God each day. Realize that you, the human, are walking with you, the divine being. There's two sides of consciousness there. There's the human side, and then there's the God side. There's the God being side. You are, in truth, a God being, part of a family of God beings, just as much as myself or anybody else. So I'm thankful to realize what was said to me was the truth, and that I accept it as the basic premise of life. Because based on that basic premise of life, everything else makes sense to me now. For myself, not necessarily to others, but to me it makes much more sense. It makes much more sense to see God all around in everything. To see the Creator all around in inanimate objects, in life forms, in people, in creatures, in rocks and minerals and vegetation, in all of the things that are going on. It's all the Creator. It's all the Creator of it all. And the Creator gives each of us an opportunity to have a relationship, to walk day by day in that. So it's good to be here with all the things, after going through all sorts of things for myself, and I know you go through these things also, and for the things that you and each one else goes through, I'm deeply thankful, because those things are a chance for you to be free of the limitations of boxed-in ideas of consciousness, free to explore a world of limitless possibilities, free to be who you truly are able to be. I'm thankful to life for all the pressure patterns. I'm thankful to life for all that's given, all the provision of life, all the opportunities of life, all the circumstances. And I don't have any sense of trying to steer life to do anything else for me. I'm completely surrendered in the moment to allowing whatever life has in store. It's not a fatalistic type of approach. It's more I'm content to let the Creator do whatever the Creator needs to do, and go along with it and be thankful for it. So I remain thankful for all the things that have ever happened to me, thankful to the Creator for bringing me through each moment, as much as the Creator can bring each and every single one through their challenges. So it's not faith, but it's the awareness. It's the truth that will ultimately free you. And as you come to know the Creator, as you come to be free from the lacks and the limitations and the particular boxes that you found yourself in, I delight to see the emergence of you in the world. Because as you emerge, as more and more people awaken to the reality of God being here, always, in this moment and forever, then the planet has a chance of awakening. Then people will change one at a time, because certainly there's no sense of anybody out there, any government or agency or anybody else, religion or anybody else, have the power to do anything. Only power there is the power of the Creator. All glory and honor and power and might be unto the Creator, be unto the one who sits upon the throne of all of life, now and forever. It's good to be here. I'll open up the phone line in a time of response.